if there were chariots found in the Red Sea, it would probably have something to do with the crossing of the sea.
Divers call it the needle in the haystack, but this needle is made of gold. Rumors have circulated for years about a 4-spoke chariot wheel veneered in gold sitting on the seafloor. It sounded like a fairy tale until a submersible scout brought back data that matches the legend. This isn't just about treasure, it is about a timeline that historians are desperate to ignore. We are going deep to see why this underwater graveyard is causing such a panic in the scientific world. The underwater graveyard exposed. As the drone descended, the lights cut through the darkness, revealing something that stopped the team cold. Emerging from the sand were outlines of what looked exactly like wheels. Not just one or two, but a field of them. They were encrusted in coral, sure, but the shape was undeniable. Nature does not make perfect circles with spokes. But here's the catch. This wasn't a shipwreck. A shipwreck looks like a giant pile of mess in one spot. This debris was spread out in a line, almost like a trail. It looked less like a boat that sank and more like a convoy that was stopped dead in its tracks. The layout suggested panic. It suggested a mass event where hundreds, maybe thousands of people and animals were caught in a sudden rush of water. The submersible scout moved closer, using its robotic arms to gently dust away some of the silt. The camera zoomed in on an axle standing upright on the seabed. It was twisted, but it was there. The coral had grown around it, preserving the shape of the metal inside. In the world of marine salvage, this is a huge red flag. It means the object has been down there for a very, very long time. The data coming back to the surface was screaming one thing: Bronze Age technology. The spacing of the wheels, the size of the axles, it all matched the military specs of ancient Egypt. But this is where it gets tricky. According to mainstream history, the Egyptian army had no business being at the bottom of this specific part of the sea. If you look at the standard maps, the crossing of the Red Sea, if it happened at all, was supposed to be in shallow marshes up north. That's the safe version of history it's easy to explain away. Oh, they just walked through a swamp, but these remains were found deep. Like really deep. This implies a wall of water that collapsed on a massive scale, exactly like the dramatic story we all know. It's not that simple, though. The deeper the scout went, the stranger the finds became. The drone's sensors picked up high concentrations of metal in areas that looked like natural coral reefs. When they analyzed the shapes, they realized the coral was actually jacketed around metal objects. The metal had rusted away over 3,000 years, but the coral had solidified around it, creating a perfect mold of the original object divers call these concretions. It's nature's way of taking a snapshot, and these snapshots look like swords, shields, and oddly shaped hooks that were used to control horses. Wait, horses? In the middle of the ocean? The scout identified structures that looked remarkably like the rib cages of large animals. Now, whales die in the ocean all the time, but these bones were mixed in with the wheel shapes. They were tangled together. A whale doesn't die tangled in a chariot wheel. This was a chaotic scene of destruction. The implications started to sink in for the crew. If this really was a military force and they really were drowned at this depth, then the energy required to move that much water is mind-boggling. We aren't talking about a high tide. We are talking about a displacement of water that defies physics. The team knew they were sitting on a powder keg. If they released this data without triple checking, they would be laughed out of the room. But the images were clear. The submersible had found a path of destruction that perfectly aligned with an ancient beachhead on the Egyptian side and a landing point on the Saudi Arabian side, and get this. The sheer number of targets on the sonar screen suggested this wasn't a small patrol. This was a massive force. The debris field stretched for over a mile. It paints a picture of an army in full pursuit, confident they could make it across, only to be crushed by the sea returning to its place. The wow factor here isn't just the wheels, it's the context. These things are sitting on a specific underwater formation that acts like a bridge. It's the only place in the entire deep Gulf where a crossing is even theoretically possible. And right there, smack in the middle of that bridge, is where the drone found the remains. It's almost too perfect. And in the world of archaeology, too perfect usually makes people suspicious. But the robot doesn't lie. It just records what it sees, and it saw the graveyard of a superpower. What lies beneath the sand is even more disturbing than the wheels. The impossible geometry of the Gulf. To really understand why this discovery is making people sweat, you have to look at the map. I mean, really look at it. The Red Sea isn't just a long swimming pool, it's a massive tectonic rip in the earth. In most places, the sides drop off like a cliff. We are talking about depths plunging to 5,000 or 6,000 feet almost instantly. If you were an ancient refugee trying to cross that, you wouldn't make it 10 yards. You'd be climbing down a vertical underwater canyon. It's impossible. This is one of the main reasons historians have always rolled their eyes at the Exodus story. They say, look at the bathymetry. You can't walk across a canyon. But here's the catch. There is one exception, just one, and it's exactly where this debris field was found. It's called the Nuweiba Peninsula. If you look at it on Google Earth, it looks like a giant arrowhead jutting out from the Egyptian coast into the water. It's huge, about 4 miles long and extremely flat. It's plenty of room for, say, a couple of million people to camp out. But the real magic is underwater. Extending from this beach all the way across to Saudi Arabia is a natural underwater land bridge. It's an anomaly. While the rest of the Gulf drops to abyssal depths, this strip of land stays relatively shallow. Now, when I say shallow, I'm using that term loosely. It's still hundreds of feet deep today, but compared to the mile-deep drop-offs on either side, it's a highway. The Submersible Scout's mapping data confirmed the slope of this bridge. It's gentle, a gradient of about 6 degrees. That is steep for a car maybe, but for a person walking or a horse pulling a chariot, it's totally doable. It's like walking up a long, steady ramp. So, here's the deal. This geography creates a perfect trap. Imagine you are leading a group of people. You get to Nuweiba Beach, you are stuck. To the north, mountains. To the south, mountains. Behind you, a massive army. Ahead of you, the sea. There is literally nowhere to go. It is a tactical dead end. If the water were to somehow part, whether you believe in miracles or freak wind tides, this land bridge is the only place you could walk any other spot, and you fall off a cliff. The team analyzed the sediment on this bridge. It's firm. In other parts of the sea, the floor is soft, goopy muck that would swallow a chariot wheel in seconds. But on this bridge, the current keeps the floor scrubbed and harder. It's paved by nature. This explains why the wheels didn't just sink into the abyss and disappear forever. They settled on this bridge. They were scattered across this specific strip of high ground. The crazy part is, the surrounding mountains are rich in minerals that wash down into the sea. This specific chemical mix in the water might be the secret ingredient that helped preserve the artifacts. The coral in this specific zone grows differently because of the mineral runoff from the wadis, dry riverbeds. It creates a protective shell faster than in the open ocean. So you have a geographical funnel that forces everyone into one spot. You have a flat, walkable bridge underwater, and you have a chemical environment perfect for making coral molds of metal. It's like the planet built a museum specifically to store this event. The drone mapping also showed something chilling at the edges of the bridge. The drop-off is sudden. If the army was pushed off the side during the chaos, their remains would tumble down into the crushing blackness of the deep trench. And sure enough, the scout picked up debris tumbling down the slopes of the bridge, suggesting a chaotic, messy route where people were falling over the edge in the darkness. This isn't just a line on a map, it's a kill box. The geography matches the narrative of a desperate escape and a violent end. The mountains locked them in and the sea swallowed the pursuers. Everyone's obsessed with the how of the water parting, but they ignore the where. Without this land bridge, the story is impossible. With it, it becomes plausible. And finding the chariots right on top of it? That is the smoking gun. But geography is just dirt and water. The real story is what happened to the war machines that tried to cross it. The condition of the wheels tells us exactly how violent this event really was. The metal is gone, but the coral remembers everything. The evidence is dissolving. Let's zoom in on the artifacts themselves. The images captured by the submersible are haunting. You are looking at the seafloor, seeing the natural curves of brain coral and swaying fans, and then, boom, a perfect 90-degree angle. In the wild, 90-degree angles are rare. You don't see them in biology, but you see them in engineering. The scout found axle hubs standing straight up with the wheel spokes radiating out. The coral has encrusted them, turning them into what archaeologists call coral tombs. The wood and iron have rotted away centuries ago, eaten by the salt and the worms, but the coral is smart. It attaches to a hard surface and grows outward. Even after the original object dissolves, the coral keeps the shape. It's like a hollow ghost of the object. Basically, the team found wheels with 4 spokes, 6 spokes, and 8 spokes. This sounds like a boring detail, but it is actually the key to the whole timeline. In ancient Egypt, chariot technology changed fast. It was like the fighter jet technology of today. In one dynasty, they used 4 spokes. In the next, they realized those broke too easily, so they switched to 6. Later, they tried 8. The debris field has a mix, but it is heavily dominated by the 4 and 6 spoke variety. This places the site squarely in the 18th dynasty of Egypt. That is the exact time period many scholars point to for the Exodus. If these were Roman chariots or modern trash, the wheels would look completely different. Roman wheels were clunky and thick. These are sleek, racing-style wheels designed for speed and war. But here's the catch. There is one rumor that has haunted this site for 40 years, the Golden Wheel. The legend goes that deep on the slope there is a chariot wheel that isn't covered in coral. Why? Because coral can't grow on gold. Gold is a noble metal. It doesn't corrode, and marine life has a hard time sticking to it. The submersible scout picked up a glimmer, a reflection. It was faint, buried halfway in the sand. The camera couldn't get a full 360-degree view, but the glint was unmistakable. If this is a gold veneered wheel, it changes the game. Soldiers didn't ride in gold chariots. Only one person did. The Pharaoh. Finding a gold wheel implies the leadership was there. It implies the king himself led the charge into the seabed. This matches the texts that say Pharaoh chased them down. It's a detail that sends shivers down your spine because it suggests the head of the snake was cut off right here in the water, and that's putting it lightly. The state of the debris suggests total carnage. The wheels aren't just parked, they are shattered. Axles are snapped. This indicates a violent force. Imagine a wall of water weighing millions of tons crashing down. It would smash wood and twist metal like a soda can. The debris field looks exactly like the aftermath of a tsunami. The scout also found what looked like cab remnants, the standing platform of the chariot. These are harder to spot because they were made of wood and leather, which rot fast. But the metal fittings, the pins, and the rails left their mark in the coral. We have to talk about the metal detector hits too. The submersible wasn't just using a camera, it was using a magnetometer. It detected heavy deposits of bronze and iron inside the coral mounds. This proves these aren't just funny-shaped rocks. There is refined metal inside. What most people don't realize is the Red Sea is highly corrosive. It is warm and salty. Keeping anything recognizable for 3,500 years is a miracle. The fact that we can see anything at all is due to that rapid coral growth sealing the deal. But the clock is ticking. The coral itself is heavy. Eventually, the weight of the coral crushes the hollow void inside and the shape collapses. We are seeing these things at the very end of their lifespan. If we had looked 1,000 years ago, they might have been perfect. If we look 100 years from now, they might be gone. The team noted that several formations seen in older, grainier footage from the 90s seem to have collapsed or vanished. The evidence is erasing itself. This creates a desperate urgency. We are trying to read a book while the pages are burning. The wheels tell us the what. They tell us this was an Egyptian military unit, but they don't tell us the who. For that, we need to look at the biological evidence. And that is where the dive gets truly gruesome. Stones don't bleed, but the ocean floor is full of things that once did. The biological proof of disaster. When you explore a shipwreck like the Titanic, you don't see bodies. The ocean is efficient. Crabs, fish, and bacteria recycle organic matter very quickly. Usually, within a few years, bones are gone. So finding human remains from 3,000 years ago should be impossible. It's not that simple, though. The Red Sea has a trick up its sleeve. It's called mineralization. Under the right conditions, if a body is buried quickly in mineral-rich silt, the bone doesn't just rot. It acts like a sponge. It absorbs the minerals from the water, and over centuries, the calcium in the bone is replaced by stone. The submersible scout spotted shapes that are unmistakably biological. We are talking about femurs, rib cages, and skulls. But they aren't white bone. They are black, coral-covered stone. The most shocking find was the horses. You can mistake a rock for a human skull if you squint hard enough, but a horse hoof? That is a very specific shape. The drone captured images of what looks like a horse's hoof, perfectly preserved in a mineralized state. Yeah, about that. Horses do not live in the ocean. Finding horse remains at 2,000 feet deep, miles from the shore, has only one explanation. They were brought there, and they didn't swim there voluntarily. The size of the debris field suggests hundreds of horses. The clusters of bones are mixed with the chariot wheels. This confirms the rider and the mount died together. It was sudden. If it had been a slow-sinking ship, the horses might have swam or floated away. But being tangled in the wreckage implies they were tied to the heavy chariots when the water hit. They were anchored to the bottom by their own war machines. So here's the deal. The team used spectral analysis on the images. The chemical signature of these rocks matched the density of fossilized bone, not regular seabed limestone. This changes the site from an archaeological find to a mass grave. It brings a heavy, somber tone to the mission. You aren't just looking at history, you are looking at the final moments of thousands of men. The layout of the bodies is also telling. They aren't neatly laid out. They are tumbled, twisted, smashed against the coral heads. It's a scene of panic. One of the divers from a previous expedition who used mixed gas to go deeper than usual reported seeing a human skull with a coral growing right out of the eye socket. It's a gruesome image, but it proves the biology is there. But here's the catch. Science is fighting against nature here. The experts want to bring a bone to the surface to test for DNA. But you can't. The moment you try to cut that coralized bone out of the seabed, it crumbles. It is too fragile. It has to be studied in situ, right where it is. This makes it hard to prove to the skeptics. They say, bring us a skull. The team says, we can't, it will turn to dust. It's a catch-22. The proof is there, but it is trapped. The sheer volume of biological matter also explains the coral growth. Coral loves nutrients. A decomposing army would have provided a massive nutrient spike, kickstarting the reef growth on the wheels. The army essentially became the reef. The crazy part is, skeptics argue that maybe a cattle barge sank. But cattle barges don't carry horses and chariots, and they don't carry men with weapons. The scout identified shapes that look like kopsh swords, the curved sickle swords of ancient Egypt, lying next to the bones. This combination, weapons, wheels, horses, men, is a fingerprint that can't be faked. There is no other event in history that puts all four of those things at the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba. We are looking at a specialized military strike force that was wiped out in a single afternoon. The biological evidence creates a direct link to the narrative of the Exodus. But if the evidence is so strong, why haven't you heard about it on the nightly news? Why isn't this the biggest discovery of the century? That leads us to the man who started it all and the controversy that keeps this site in the dark. He was called a fraud, but maybe he was just early. Vindication from the deep. You can't talk about the Red Sea crossing without talking about Ron Wyatt. To some, he is a hero like Indiana Jones. To others, he is a total fraud. Wyatt was an anesthetist, not a trained archaeologist. In 1978, he went to Nuweiba Beach with his sons and some scuba gear. He didn't have millions of dollars or a submersible drone. He just had a hunch and a Bible. He dove down and claimed he saw the wheels. He claimed he found the columns on the beach marking the crossing. He even claimed he found the golden wheel. But here's the catch. He didn't document it like a scientist. His photos were grainy. He didn't have GPS coordinates that were precise enough. And because he was an amateur making huge biblical claims, the academic world slammed the door in his face. They called him a pseudoscientist. They said he was seeing what he wanted to see. For decades, if you mentioned Ron Wyatt in a university, you would get laughed at. He was the guy who found everything. Noah's Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, the crossing. It seemed too good to be true. And that's putting it lightly. The establishment hated him. They said there were no wheels, they said he planted them, or they said it was just junk from a modern boat. But now, 40 years later, this new team with a robot scout is going back to the exact same coordinates. And guess what? The robot is seeing what Ron saw. The robot doesn't have a religious bias. It doesn't care about the Bible or the skeptics, it just sees the wheels. This is a massive moment of vindication. The shapes are exactly where Wyatt said they were. So here's the deal. The tragedy of Ron Wyatt is that he didn't have the tech to prove his case. He was operating in a time before 4K cameras and side-scan sonar. He was also fighting a political battle. The Saudis arrested him at one point. The Egyptians were suspicious of him. He was a guy poking around in a military zone. Wyatt claimed he retrieved a wheel hub and brought it to the authorities in Cairo, but it disappeared into the vaults of the museum, never to be seen again. Conspiracy? Maybe. Or maybe it was just lost in the bureaucratic shuffle. The crazy part is, the new data suggests Wyatt might have actually underestimated the scale. He saw a few wheels. The drone sees hundreds. He saw a path. The drone sees a battlefield. This brings up a difficult question for the skeptics. If Wyatt was a liar, how did he guess the exact location of a massive underwater debris field that looks like chariots? That is one heck of a lucky guess. The Wyatt factor is why this discovery is so polarized. If a mainstream scientist had found this first, it would be on the cover of National Geographic. But because the crazy Bible guy found it first, mainstream science has to pretend it's not there to save face. They don't want to admit the amateur was right. What most people don't realize is the site is deep. Wyatt was diving at the very limit of recreational scuba limits. He was risking his life. Nitrogen narcosis, getting narked or high on nitrogen, is a real danger. Critics use this to say he was hallucinating. Oh, he was just drunk on nitrogen. But the drone doesn't get narked. The drone confirms the hallucination is solid matter. Wyatt's legacy is complicated, but the evidence is becoming simple. The artifacts are real, but seeing them is one thing, recovering them is another, and that brings us to the heavy hitters, the technology that is finally peeling back the layers of the deep. The man is gone, but the machine is finishing his work. The tech that strips the sea. Let's geek out for a second on the gear. You don't just swim down to 3,000 feet. The pressure down there is over 1,300 pounds per square inch. It would crush a human like a soda can. The team used a ROV, remotely operated vehicle, linked by a fiber optic tether to a ship on the surface. This isn't a GoPro on a stick. This is a military-grade machine equipped with side-scan sonar and sub-bottom profilers. Basically, side-scan sonar shoots sound waves sideways. It creates a 3D map of the floor. It strips away the water and lets you see the texture of the bottom. This is how they found the linear pattern of the wheels, but the real MVP is the sub-bottom profiler. This tech shoots low-frequency sound into the mud. It can see what is buried under the sand. The Scout pinged metal targets buried 5-10 feet under the silt. This is crucial. The visible wheels are just the tip of the iceberg. The main army is likely buried under thousands of years of sediment. The profiler showed dense clusters of metal and bone density hidden from the naked eye. And get this, they also used photogrammetry. The drone took thousands of overlapping photos. A computer then stitches them together to create a perfect 3D model of the wheel. You can rotate it, measure it, and slice it digitally. This revealed the axle pins. It revealed the wood grain texture preserved in the coral. These details are impossible to see with the human eye while wearing a foggy dive mask. The tech also measured the magnetic field. Iron creates a magnetic anomaly. The drone detected a magnetic trail leading from the Egyptian shore toward the Saudi shore, a trail of iron. In the ocean, that is a signature of a convoy. But here's the catch. The tech also revealed the damage. It showed that drag nets from fishing trawlers have smashed parts of the site. It showed where curious divers have broken off pieces of coral, destroying the artifacts inside the robot as a witness to the destruction. It documented that the site is shrinking. The lighting on the ROV is also key. At that depth, it is pitch black. The ROV blasts the area with 50,000 lumens of light. For the first time in 3,500 years, the light hit those chariots. The colors of the coral popped. The eerie shadows of the rib cages were revealed in 4K resolution. It's not that simple, though. Operating this tech is expensive. We are talking tens of thousands of dollars a day. Who is paying for this? It's not the universities, it's private donors. This keeps the data private, too. The team isn't releasing everything yet. They are terrified of looters. If people know the exact GPS coordinates of a potential gold wheel, pirates will be there tomorrow with dynamite. So, the tech that reveals the truth also requires a veil of secrecy. The images are clear, the data is solid, the math works, but there is one massive wall standing in the way of the truth. It's not the water, it's the government. You can fight the ocean, but you can't fight the bureaucracy. So, do you think these coral shapes are just a coincidence of nature, or are we staring directly at the remains of the biblical Exodus? The evidence is stacking up, but the clock is ticking. Smash that like button if you want more deep-sea mysteries, and subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next.